What's love got to do with it? As you may recognize, that's a refrain from a hit song by the inimitable Tina Turner. And just as an aside, I had the great pleasure of seeing Tina Turner in concert in an outdoor arena theater in Northern California many years ago. It's blazoned into my memory as a really, truly wonderful experience. But what's love got to do with it? Absolutely everything. But more than a few people today are mostly mistaken about what love really is and how it works, and especially what it has to do with God. Modern Western society generally assumes that love is personal and private, even when it occasionally shows up in public, like for a wedding. Even with all the people gathered around to witness the exchange of vows born from love, the love itself is usually confined to the couple. Romantic love is its own end, in other words. But there is, of course, much more to love than romance. In nearly all of the world's religious traditions, love has a purpose. Love is offered for the sake of thriving. It resides at the heart of flourishing. It binds in order to heal. It mends so as to renew and join. It inspires to form alliances. It fuels courage for solidarity. Yes, and the prophet Isaiah this morning would likely object to the distinction I just made between romance and purpose. For most of the ancient prophets, God's love affair with God's people is for the sake of a whole world of flourishing and thriving for all. And this morning's passage from Isaiah illustrates beautifully, even organically, that powerful link between love and purpose. And it's one of my favorite passages because it has this wonderful image of God in love and singing. Let me sing for my beloved, Isaiah writes, my love song concerning his vineyard. Now, if you're not a vintner or not even an active gardener, though I know there are plenty of those in this parish, as most gardeners know, earth yields abundance when treated tenderly and with care, and yes, with something like love. Fruit, whether it's the fruit of a tree, the fruit of a vine, fruit, this has fascinated me for a long time. Fruit will reflect the character of the soil in which it is grown. Right here in Michigan, that's why there are differences between different types of blueberries. You knew I had to get blueberries in this summer at some point. Grapes will take on the taste of the care of those who cultivated the soil. That's why Isaiah imagines God speaking with such a scandalized tone of voice this morning. The vineyard of God's people, tended carefully and lovingly by God, should have produced a harvest of justice. The fruits of peace with abundance. But the people instead reaped violence and bloodshed and outcries of misery. God tends the soil of God's own vineyard with love for a purpose. Not only for the vineyard's own thriving, but for the full flourishing of all those who will enjoy its harvest. This is one of the things I love about Isaiah in particular. Isaiah has a vision for God's people that is not restricted to God's small community of people, but for the whole world. A blessing overflowing from God's purpose in love. So what in the world is going on with Luke's Jesus this morning? This is a really brutal passage from Luke. Setting fire to the earth and dividing families does not sound like we're talking about love. This is especially peculiar given that prior to this passage, Luke is cataloging all the various ways that gospel love reorders the world, including our closest social relations and long-standing communal configurations. Luke is cataloging how the coming realm of God in love will reshape the world for flourishing. Luke is also careful to note that the reordering of society for the coming realm of God is not good news for those who benefit from the way things currently stand. Social systems that favor some at the expense of others, systems that concentrate the power of wealth among a few to keep the poor out of sight, systems that classify whole populations of people as disposable, deportable. These are the systems to which Luke's Jesus intends to set fire. Okay, we can take a deep breath, yes. That's going to be hard work. But why would Luke's Jesus single out families for these cautionary notes about the coming realm of God? Seems to me that embedded in this ancient text is a really important but uncomfortable insight. Family systems are most often at the root of love's distortions. We might recall that the patriarchal household of the first century drew some rather strict lines of affinity and loyalty, also concerning religious purity and economic vitality. Family in that ancient society came with rather rigid boundary lines. And Luke's Jesus is imagining a world in which the orphan, and the widow and the stranger are cared for as if they are family. And this is echoing the ancient Hebrew prophets. Jesus isn't making this up. He's drawing from his own religious tradition to dissolve these rigid boundaries in order to make room for everyone in the household of God. Again, this is not good news for those who fear they're going to have to relinquish something in order to make room for others. This might even sound horrifying if one sees only scarcity in the world. But expanded households sound divine for those who want to trust in God's abundance. I want to pause for just a second and make sure that we don't rush by too quickly that word patriarchal in the description I just offered. Because not only in ancient societies, but also today, and especially just recently today, there are certain forms of family that seem to take on a religious character, as if those forms are divinely ordained. These family structures, both in the first century and today, diminish some, like women and children, in order to elevate others, men and fathers. That's the very definition of a patriarchal society. This kind of structured inequality in family systems is often justified and maintained with religious language. This is why Luke's Jesus is really annoyed this morning. By using religious language to justify injustice and inequality. And it happens first of all in our family systems. And this stands in really stark contrast to the story that Luke seems to want to tell in his account of the gospel, the story in which the needs of the poor are prioritized and where women take on roles of leadership, and with those with childlike hearts are the ones who receive the kingdom first. And those socially marginalized because of physical infirmities are healed. Luke's Jesus says there is always more room at the table. Always. So, what's love got to do with it? Absolutely everything. Especially when love is not treated as some kind of sentimental retreat from hard work. That's not love. Love actually is the very source of labor and struggle and toil for a better world. Without love, we don't make costly commitments or put our comfort at risk or enter into deep solidarity with those who are different from us. Love is what convinces us, inspires us, and equips us to make the world a better place. The love that changes the world is the love that changes us first. And it's the same love that made the world from nothing. The love that fashioned all sorts of creatures who think and feel and hope and grieve and rejoice. The love that chose to dwell among us as one of us and die like us and then to be raised from death as the first fruits of the harvest of God's coming realm. We are here this morning to bear witness to that kind of world-changing love. That's what I love about this passage from the letter to the Hebrews that we heard this morning. Chris, you read that so beautifully, this litany of our ancestors in faith, this great cloud of witnesses, just like them. The point of hearing that, the point of the letter writer writing it, is that we are just like them. Just like them, we bear witness to love by the way we live, by the convictions we embody, and the fruits of peace with justice that we cultivate and reap in our communities of gospel love. Also, just like them, our witness might come with a cost. Because there are people and communities and institutions in this world who do not want this story told. The story of God's love in Jesus. We heard about them too in this letter to the Hebrews this morning. A costly witness is precisely why we're here, gathering at God's own table every week to feast on love, to be strengthened and equipped by love, to be renewed as we gather with love for a love that this world needs for its healing. Our dear ancestors in faith. I love this passage. I love hearing this passage in a parish that's named for all the saints. This great cloud of witnesses. Friends, we are surrounded this morning, right now, by this great cloud of witnesses. They are rooting for us. They've got our backs. And they are inspiring us and urging us to take the gospel of God's love into the world that is desperate for it, for its healing and renewal. That is what love's got to do with it. Amen.